Hi, I'm Zoe Leviston and I'm a CSIRO researcher based in Perth. Today we released our 4th annual survey of Australian attitudes to climate change, where we interviewed over 5,000 people from across the country. I'm going to take you through some of the highlights of the report. 4 in 5 people we surveyed think climate change is happening. When we asked people what they thought the causes of climate change were, those who thought that climate was changing were roughly equally divided into those who thought that human activities versus natural causes were the most to blame. But when we ask people about what the rest of Australia thinks, we find something curious. People generally overestimate the amount of other people who would concur with their own opinion about climate change. This was particularly so for the people who thought that climate change wasn't happening at all. Even though under 8% of people in our survey thought the climate wasn't changing, these people thought that nearly 50% of other Australians would share their view. When we asked people to rank climate change compared to other concerns in society, such as health, education and the cost of living, we found that climate change ranks pretty low compared to these other concerns. We find there's little familiarity with terms related to climate change, like climate adaptation, what we'll do about the consequences of climate change, and climate mitigation, what we can do to slow or stop climate change. But does this lack of emphasis and familiarity with climate change terms impact on what people are actually doing? We asked people what they were doing in their everyday lives to respond to climate change and why. Had they installed solar panels? Did they always recycle their household waste? Had they changed their diet? We found that people were doing a whole range of activities for a whole variety of reasons, with financial motivations being the most common, but having a combination of motivations was also a very common response. We found that misperceptions about what others think about climate change extends to misperceptions about what others do about climate change, but in a very different way. When we asked our participants how they thought their own behaviour compared to that of other Australians, we found that 22% of people were pretty accurate in estimating how much they did compared to others. Another 22% actually underestimated how much they did compared to others. But the majority of people overestimated how much they did compared to other Australians. When it came to a range of extreme climate and weather events, such as bushfires, droughts and storms, most people expressed concern, and most people thought they would get both more intense and more frequent in the future, especially heat waves, heavy rain and storm events. We also asked people how they thought they'd cope in the future with these extreme events, and we found that previous experience was really important here. If people had previously experienced some sort of loss, injury or damage as a result of one of these events, then they thought they'd cope pretty well. But if people hadn't experienced these previous events, they thought they'd cope pretty poorly. So what changes have we seen over time since our first report back in 2010? People's attitudes towards climate change and what they do about it has remained fairly stable, but we have seen some small changes. For instance, people are now more trusting of information on climate change from environmental scientists, and more people think that responding to climate change is an opportunity to be part of something bigger. Surveys like ours reveal just how much consensus there is about our changing climate and how much Australians are doing every day already to respond to it.